The shadow, the hidden monster. Within. What if the darkest parts of you are not your enemies, but your greatest teachers? Most people spend their entire lives running from something they cannot name, a shadow that follows them everywhere, whispering truths they refuse to hear. This shadow is not evil. It is not broken. It is simply the collection of everything you were told to hide: your anger, your desires, your fears, your failures, your jealousy, your grief. Society handed you a mask on the day you were born and said, "Wear this. This is acceptable. This is lovable. This is safe." And so you buried everything else underground. But here is the shocking truth. Whatever you bury does not die. It grows. It festers. It becomes the anxiety that wakes you at 3 a.m. It becomes the rage you cannot explain. It becomes the depression that has no visible reason. It becomes the self-sabotage that destroys every good thing you build. The shadow does not disappear when you ignore it. It simply starts controlling you from the darkness, pulling strings you cannot see. The people who fear their true self the most are not weak people. They are people who were punished the most for being real. They learned early that authenticity was dangerous. And that lesson, that catastrophic, soul-destroying lesson, became the prison they now call their personality. The shadow demands to be seen, and until you face it, it will face everything else for you. The persona. The beautiful lie you tell the world. What if your entire identity is a carefully constructed performance, and you have forgotten you are the actor? The persona is the social mask, the version of yourself you present to the world to be accepted, admired, and loved. It is your professional smile, your curated social media life, your polished answers to uncomfortable questions. The persona is not entirely false, but it is dangerously incomplete. Here is what shocks most people when they finally confront this truth. They have spent more energy maintaining their image than actually living their life. They have chosen careers not from passion, but from approval. They have chosen partners not from love, but from status. They have chosen silence not from peace, but from fear. Every decision has been filtered through one terrifying question: what will people think? And the more convincing your persona becomes, the more disconnected you grow from your actual self. You become a stranger to your own soul. You wake up one morning, perhaps at 35, perhaps at 50, and realize with horrifying clarity that the life you built belongs to someone else, that the person living your life is not you. This is not a midlife crisis. This is a soul crisis. This is your true self, buried under decades of performance, finally screaming to be acknowledged. The persona protects you from rejection, but it also protects you from yourself. Individuation, the terrifying journey to wholeness. What if becoming whole requires you to first fall completely apart? Individuation is the process of becoming who you truly are, not who your parents wanted, not who society demanded, not who your trauma shaped you to be. It is the most courageous journey a human being can undertake, and it is also the most terrifying, because to become whole, you must first confront everything you have denied. This journey does not begin with inspiration. It begins with crisis. It begins when your carefully constructed life suddenly stops working, when the relationship collapses, when the career feels meaningless, when the success feels hollow, when the smile you wear every day begins to crack. This is not punishment. This is invitation. The psyche is calling you home to yourself. But most people refuse this invitation. They find a new distraction, a new relationship, a new goal, a new addiction, anything to avoid sitting alone with the unbearable silence of their own truth. Because deep inside, they know that if they truly look at themselves, everything will have to change. The job, the relationships, the identity, the entire story they have been telling the world and themselves. Wholeness is not comfortable. It is not glamorous. It is not a weekend retreat or a motivational quote. It is the brutal, beautiful, earth-shattering process of choosing yourself fully, completely, without apology, even when every voice around you says you should not. Projection. How you see others is how you hide from yourself. What if every person who irritates you, every trait you despise in others, every quality that triggers your deepest rage, is actually a mirror showing you exactly what you refuse to see in yourself? This is one of the most confronting truths in all of human psychology. Projection is the unconscious mechanism by which you take what you cannot accept in yourself and attribute it to others. The person who furiously condemns dishonesty is often hiding their own deceptions. The person who despises weakness in others is terrified of their own vulnerability. The person who criticizes others' selfishness is suppressing their own unexpressed needs. You do not hate what you see in others. You hate what you recognize and refuse to acknowledge in yourself. This is why projection is so dangerous. It allows you to remain completely unconscious of your own shadows while feeling entirely justified in your judgments. You feel righteous. You feel correct. You feel superior. And all the while, the very qualities you condemn are living rent-free in the basement of your own soul, growing stronger with every denial. When you stop projecting and start asking, "Why does this bother me so deeply?" the answers will disturb you. They will also free you. Because the moment you reclaim what you have projected, you reclaim power you did not even know you had surrendered. Your judgments about others are autobiographies written in invisible ink. The false self versus the true self, living someone else's life. What if you have never actually made a single authentic choice in your entire life? What if every decision, your career, your relationships, your values, your beliefs, was chosen for you by fear, conditioning, and the desperate need for belonging? The false self is not a lie you consciously tell. It is a survival strategy you unconsciously adopted, possibly before you were old enough to speak. Children are not born with a false self. They are born completely, terrifyingly authentic, crying when hurt, laughing without reason, loving without strategy. But then the world responds. A parent withdraws love when the child expresses certain emotions. A teacher humiliates authentic curiosity. A community rejects individuality. And the child learns the most devastating lesson of their life. Who I truly am is not safe. So the child builds a false self, a version that earns love, avoids punishment, and belongs. And this false self becomes so sophisticated, so convincing, that eventually even its creator forgets it is a construction. Decades pass. The child becomes an adult who has never truly chosen anything, who has only ever chosen what keeps them safe from the terror of rejection. The true self does not disappear. It waits. Sometimes it speaks through dreams, sometimes through art, sometimes through the inexplicable sadness that arrives on Sunday evenings when the week of performance finally pauses. That sadness is not weakness. That sadness is your soul knocking. The collective unconscious. Why society fears authentic individuals. What if society itself is built on the systematic suppression of the true self and rewards you generously for remaining asleep? The collective unconscious is the shared psychological inheritance of humanity, the ancient patterns, symbols, and instincts that live beneath individual awareness. But beyond the psychological concept lies a devastating social reality. Conformity is rewarded and authenticity is punished. Think about every system that shapes human life. Education, religion, corporate culture, social media. Every single one of these systems operates most efficiently when individuals remain predictable, manageable, and most importantly, unconscious of their own depth. A person who knows who they truly are cannot be easily manipulated, cannot be sold inadequacy, cannot be controlled through shame or approval. This is why authentic individuals have always been dangerous to established orders. They have been called mad, rebellious, immoral, and threatening, not because they were destructive, but because they were free. And freedom, genuine freedom, is the most threatening thing in a world built on unconscious compliance. Society does not fear your failure. Society fears your awakening. Because when one person genuinely confronts their true self and chooses to live from that place, it sends a seismic signal to everyone around them. It whispers the most dangerous truth of all. It is possible. You can choose yourself. You can be real. And that possibility threatens every comfortable, unconscious, beautifully constructed lie the world has agreed to call normal. What if everything you believe about yourself is wrong? What if the personality you wake up with every morning, the identity you defend in every argument, the story you tell about who you are and why you are this way, is not actually you? What if it is a prison so perfectly designed that it feels like a home? What if the anxiety that never leaves you, the emptiness that success cannot fill, the exhaustion that sleep cannot cure, is not a disease? What if it is a message? What if the darkest, most shameful, most hidden parts of yourself are not your destruction, but your destiny? What if the life you are living right now belongs to someone else, to your parents' fears, your society's demands, your trauma's instructions, and your actual self, your real self, the self that was born knowing exactly who it was, has been locked in a basement your entire life, screaming in a language you were taught not to understand. What if facing yourself, truly, completely, without a single mask, is not the most dangerous thing you could do? What if it is the only thing that will actually save you? Stay with me, because what I'm about to tell you will either disturb you deeply or set you free, and both of those outcomes are exactly what is needed. What if I told you that the human being's greatest lifelong enemy is not failure, not poverty, not disease, not loneliness, but themselves, not the self they show to the world, the self they hide from it? There is something living inside every human being, something ancient, something powerful, something that existed before the world told you who to be. Call it your core, call it your depth, call it your soul. Whatever name you give it, it has been there since the beginning, watching patiently as you covered it with layer after layer of acceptable behavior, approved emotions, and socially sanctioned identity. And here is the truth that most people will spend their entire lives avoiding. They are terrified of it. Not terrified of failure, not terrified of death, terrified of themselves, terrified of what they would find if they stopped performing for just one honest moment and looked, really looked, at what is actually there. Think about the last time you were completely alone. No phone, no noise, no distraction, no performance required. What happened in that silence? Did you feel peace? Or did something uncomfortable rise up from beneath, something you immediately reached for your phone to drown out? That discomfort is not random. That discomfort has a name. And it is the most important thing you will ever learn to face. From the moment you arrived in this world, you were given an assignment, not spoken aloud, never written down, but communicated with devastating consistency through every interaction, every reward, every withdrawal of love, every moment of approval and disapproval. The assignment was simple: become who we need you to be. And you, because you were small and dependent and exquisitely intelligent, you completed that assignment perfectly. You learned what emotions were safe to express. You learned which parts of your personality earned love and which parts earned punishment. You learned that certain truths were dangerous, that certain desires were shameful, that certain aspects of who you were, your anger, your grief, your wildness, your sensitivity, your ambition, your sexuality, your need, were problems to be solved rather than dimensions to be embraced. And so you did what every brilliant child does. You built a self that was acceptable. You constructed a persona, a mask so convincing, so sophisticated, so perfectly calibrated to your environment that eventually you forgot you were wearing it. And you called that mask you. But everything you buried did not disappear. Nothing buried ever disappears. Every emotion you suppressed, every truth you denied, every authentic impulse you strangled before it could embarrass you, all of it went underground, into what we might call the shadow, the hidden dimension of self that contains everything you have rejected, everything you have denied, everything you have been ashamed of. And here is the catastrophic truth about the shadow. It does not weaken when ignored. It grows. It accumulates power in direct proportion to your refusal to acknowledge it. It becomes the anxiety that arrives without explanation, the rage that erupts from nowhere, the depression that makes no rational sense, the self-sabotage that destroys every good thing you carefully build, the addiction that you cannot explain, the pattern in relationships that repeats and repeats, no matter how many times you promise yourself it will be different. You are not broken. You are not weak. You are not cursed. You are simply someone who has been running from yourself for so long that you have forgotten running is not living. Now, consider this. How much of your life has been spent maintaining an image? How much energy every single day goes into managing how you are perceived? How much of your decisions, your career choice, your relationship choices, your opinions expressed or carefully hidden, have been filtered through the question, what will people think? Most people, when they sit honestly with this question, are horrified by the answer. The honest answer is almost everything. Almost every major decision has been shaped not by authentic desire, but by the desperate need to be acceptable, to belong, to be loved, to avoid the catastrophic experience of rejection. And rejection, genuine rejection, is the deepest terror the human psyche contains, because as a child, rejection did not feel like disappointment. It felt like death, Because for a small, dependent creature, abandonment by the tribe was death, and your nervous system recorded that equation with absolute precision. Authenticity equals danger. So you traded your true self for belonging. And for a while, perhaps a long while, it seemed like a reasonable trade. The mask worked. People accepted you. You received love, approval, recognition. You built a life that looked correct from the outside. But something kept happening in quiet moments, in the pause between one distraction and the next. Something kept knocking, something kept whispering, and the whispering grew louder until it became a crisis, a relationship that collapsed without warning, a career that suddenly felt like suffocation, a success that arrived and brought with it, incomprehensibly, nothing but emptiness. This is not punishment. This is the psyche refusing to die quietly. This is your buried self, the self you have been running from, declaring that it will not be ignored forever. This is an invitation, one of the most terrifying and most important invitations a human being ever receives, to finally come home to yourself. But here is why most people refuse this invitation. To accept it means to change everything, not some things, everything, because the authentic self, once genuinely encountered, will not coexist peacefully with the life built to suppress it. It will demand that you leave the relationship that was chosen from fear rather than love. It will demand that you exit the career that was chosen from approval rather than passion. It will demand that you stop performing for people whose admiration you never actually wanted. It will demand that you speak truths that will make others uncomfortable. It will demand that you disappoint people who were comfortably fed by your inauthenticity. And the world, your world, the people in it, will resist, because they were also comfortably arranged around the mask. They knew what to expect from you. You were predictable, you were manageable, you were safe. The authentic you, with boundaries, with needs, with truths, with refusals, is none of these things. This is why authenticity is the most radical act available to a human being in a world organized around compliance. Not radical in a performative sense, radical in its root meaning, reaching to the root, to the foundation, to what is genuinely, irreducibly real. Now I want you to consider something even more unsettling. Every person who irritates you, every quality in others that triggers your sharpest contempt, your quickest judgment, your most passionate criticism, pay very careful attention to it. Because the qualities you most passionately condemn in others are almost always the qualities you have most violently suppressed in yourself. The person who cannot tolerate dishonesty is usually hiding something. The person who despises vulnerability in others is usually terrified of their own. The person who most loudly demands strength from others is usually most afraid of their own weakness. You do not simply dislike what you see in others, you recognize it. At some level, beneath conscious awareness, you see yourself, and you attack it there in them, because attacking it in yourself is too unbearable to contemplate. This mechanism, this unconscious projection, is perhaps the most common way human beings avoid their own truth. It feels like judgment, it feels like righteous perception, it feels like seeing clearly, but it is actually the most sophisticated form of blindness available to the human mind. And when you finally stop projecting, when you finally ask yourself, not what is wrong with that person, but why does this bother me so deeply, so personally, so viscerally, the answers will disturb you in a way that nothing else can. And then they will liberate you in a way that nothing else can. Because here is what becomes possible when you face yourself honestly. When you stop running from your shadow, it stops chasing you. When you stop pretending the darkness does not exist, it stops controlling you from the darkness. When you look directly at the parts of yourself you have most feared, the anger, the grief, the desire, the ambition, the wildness, and you say, I see you, you are mine, you belong to me. Those parts do not destroy you. They complete you. This is what wholeness actually means, not the absence of darkness, not the performance of endless positivity, not the pretense that you have resolved all your contradictions and eliminated all your flaws. Wholeness means holding all of it, the light and the shadow, the beauty and the damage, the courage and the fear, and choosing, consciously, to be all of it rather than half. The most fully alive human beings you have ever encountered, the ones with genuine presence, real depth, actual warmth, they are not people who eliminated their struggles. They are people who stopped hiding them. They are people who met their own darkness with enough courage to say, "This is also who I am." And in that acceptance, they discovered something extraordinary, that the self they had been running from was not the enemy. It was the source of their creativity, their empathy, their courage, their capacity for genuine love, everything they had been seeking outside themselves, in achievements, in relationships, in substances, in the endless accumulation of approval, was always inside them, buried under the performance. Now I want to say something about society, because this is not only a personal story, this is a collective one. The systems that govern human life, educational systems, corporate systems, religious systems, social media, are all in different ways organized around the same fundamental principle. Conformity is safe and authenticity is dangerous. These systems do not require conscious malice to produce this effect. They simply reward predictability and punish deviance. They reward performance and punish vulnerability. They reward compliance and punish the radical, unsettling act of simply being real. And the most frightening individuals in any conformist system are not the rebels who perform rebellion, because performed rebellion is still performance. The most threatening individuals are the quietly, genuinely authentic ones. The ones who have met themselves, accepted themselves, and chosen to live from that place. Because those people cannot be manipulated through shame, cannot be controlled through the fear of rejection, cannot be sold inadequacy as a product, cannot be convinced to trade their freedom for the approval of a crowd. A person who truly knows themselves is extraordinarily difficult to manage, extraordinarily difficult to manipulate, extraordinarily difficult to keep small. And keeping people small, keeping them unconscious, keeping them running, keeping them perpetually performing for an approval that is always just slightly out of reach, is the operating system of a world that profits from your disconnection from yourself. Your awakening is not just personal liberation, it is, in the truest sense, a revolutionary act. So let me ask you again, the question I opened with. What if the thing you are most afraid of is not actually out there? What if it has never been out there? What if every person you have feared disappointing, every failure you have dreaded, every rejection you have organized your entire life to avoid? What if all of it was, at its root, one single fear wearing different costumes? The fear of seeing yourself, the fear of what you will find if you stop, if you sit in genuine silence, if you remove the mask not for the world but for yourself, and simply ask, who am I? Not who was I shaped to be? Not who do I perform being? Not who do I need to be for them to love me? Who am I? That question is not comfortable. It is not quick. It is not resolved in a single moment of inspiration. It is the work of a lifetime, and it is the only work that actually matters, because every other work, every achievement, every relationship, every experience is only as real, only as meaningful, only as alive as the person experiencing it. And if that person is a performance, then the life they live is a performance, and performances end. And what is left when the applause stops? Nothing. Unless you built something real beneath the performance. Unless somewhere, in the midst of all the acceptable roles and approved identities and polished presentations, you maintained contact with the actual, original, irreplaceable self that arrived in this world, knowing nothing about shame and everything about aliveness. That self is still there, I promise you, no matter how long ago you buried it, no matter how many layers of performance and conditioning and fear have accumulated above it. It is there. It has always been there. It will always be there, waiting, patient, undefeated. The question is not whether your true self exists. The question is whether you are willing to be disturbed enough, courageous enough, honest enough to go find it. Not tomorrow. Not when the conditions are perfect.